Hello everyone, my name is Griff, and today we are going to be going over Chapter 20 of the Dragalia Lost story. Now, I already have gone through this chapter this morning by myself. I've already read everything and played all the missions, and all in all, I do have to say that this chapter is leading up to some very interesting things that happen in the second half of the chapter. So, as I do with my normal impression videos, especially for the chapters, I'm simply just going to tap on each section, summarize what I remember from each story. I may be a little bit wrong, I may mix things up a little bit, just give my general impressions. But before we actually get into the story at all, I do want to say actually a few things. First up, happy 1,000-day celebration. The 1,000-day celebration technically starts today, but due to data mines and things, it's looking like there's going to be more celebration tomorrow. So make sure that you're ready for the celebration tomorrow, and whatever things end up happening at the end of this month. There was a data mine recently. I will not say what's in the data mine in case people don't want to know that, but make sure that you're ready to spend some Wormite. That's all I'm going to say. As far as other things that are happening, the Time Attack event has started. It is for the Twins Wrath, which means that it's for water content. It's going to be until the end of the month, so make sure that you have your water teams ready. Even if you don't really care, you should just complete it all once. It's free Wormite, basically. You just do the missions, and yeah, at the end of the month you'll get an emblem. And you'll also get some Champions Testaments as well for doing that, so if you want to level up some characters. Then we have Chapter 20 being added, as well as the following Draconic Essences. Horus, Styx, AC011 Garland, Tenchen Gonzu, and Ramiel. Now, I'm very disappointed that they didn't add Ariel yet, because she is probably the #1 dragon I wanted from the Essences. Instead, they went with Garland, who's kind of useless to me. I don't actually remember who was added later, if it was Garland or Ariel. I believe Garland was added first, which is why they're putting him in here. But if we go into here and we look at these Essences, you'll see that we're almost caught up in some of the elements. I believe that wind is the one that has the most, and I believe we almost have all of the fire already, of at least the permanent dragons. So we'll have to see what happens on Chapter 21. Maybe we'll get Ariel, maybe we'll get more wind dragons and just other elements. As far as the dragons themselves, Horus is kind of Styx is bad, Garland is pretty bad. Tenchen Gonzu is actually not terrible because she is actually the counterpart to, if we go look at her, because I don't have a max unbound one. We can go and look at her. She is the counterpart to Azazel, where you have this HP and skill haste, so she'll be very good on healers, so make sure you pick her up. And I'd say the best out of all of them is Ramiel, because Ramiel is an amazing backline helper dragon. When he's max unbound, he will give you 50% of the dragon gauge at the start of the quest, which if you use a helper skill, and they're holding a Ramiel, and that's max unbound, you instantly get that. So for example, if you're using a friend who has a helper skill of Grace, and the Grace is having a Ramiel, the HP you're getting from the life shield may be a little bit less, but it doesn't really matter because you are getting that 50% instant dragon transformation. It is super useful in dragon repping characters kits, like for example if you're running Human Mercury or Mim. You start a quest, you instantly have dragon transformation, you go in, you get it, and then you're already at your boosted status. So that's super awesome. And then also there was a Dragalia life today. So yeah, as far as the normal updates go, just make sure that you're ready for tomorrow with whatever happens with that. But let's get into the main header, the chapter itself. We've wasted enough time on preliminary things. So, Chapter 20, we left off right before both parties were about to scale the tree. And Nedrick and his gang was already at the tree base. Eden was heading to the tree base. So, essentially, as soon as it loads, in this first chapter, we're kind of given an introduction to Nedrick and Jin Lorda, who are basically going through just, talking about what they're going to do, talking about them scaling the tree, talking about how, they've journeyed together and they're going to have this mysterious thing that happens at the top of the hill, kind of hinting at the fact that some sort of change is going to happen to the two of them in short time. And Zethia is kind of just watching it and kind of confused, and Valix is nowhere to be seen. So at that point, they kind of notice and they say, hey, Zethia's listening to our conversation. We should probably, do something about that. But Nedrick's kind of like, she's going to find out eventually. And it's pretty funny because Jin Lorda kind of like talks on, and Nedrick will just reply with like a one-word reply. So you kind of see their relationship dynamic there. It's pretty funny. But they talk about the guardians of the ancient tree, and or the sacred tree rather, and they're basically like, oh yeah, they're no match for a metamorphosis. So then it cuts to Yoon and his gang, and they actually pull up onto the tree, and they see that all the guardian angels, or not angels, fairies rather, have been completely obliterated by the metamorphosis and Nidrick's gang. So unfortunate, but they get healed, and then they start to scale the tree themselves. And you play these levels, they're all on the tree backline, on the tree background. It is a very confusing map, intentionally, but it is very cool looking. Then we have Path Through the Foliage, where, again, we get this other story about the two of them, where they're just talking, and you actually see Nedrick absorb the mana of the tree a little bit. And Zethy is kind of concerned and wondering about, what is he going to be doing with that? How is his body functioning? And they're kind of just more talking about, little preliminary stuff, what they're going to do at the top of the tree, kind of just giving us a headway to see, how they're both rejecting the norms of society that were put onto them. Jin Lorda didn't want to rule, and Nedrick kind of had this body made for him, and kind of had this, whole situation where his body, was failing him, and he was born into sickness, and he was neglected, that kind of thing. So those are the two characters that are really there, but that's kind of the role they play for the rest of the chapter. We don't really see them again. And then again, we have these two levels where you just go quickly through the trees. Maybe if we have time, I'll play one of these. Then we have the Foggy Branches. Now this is where essentially they find a hole to camp out in because they're kind of like tired, and you actually see Cleo is distracted in battle and she nearly gets hit. And so essentially as you're going through that, you kind of see her just kind of dealing with what she's talking, with how she's feeling, and she's kind of concerned about herself and concerned about the fact that Yoon isn't actually a member of royal blood. So they go into this hollow to sleep in, this hollow part of the tree, and she actually goes deeper into where the mist surrounds her, and in the mist you actually see the king himself, Alberius, come up. He's talking to her kind of in a similar manner to how Xena is in this world through, I believe it was mana projection is the correct term or whatever. He just has a body, he's talking to her. And it's pretty funny because basically what the conversation devolves into him wanting to eat her food for one last time. So they talk, and he kind of gives her a confidence boost in what she is trying to accomplish in, by following the prince, following, her path. And as he fades away, there's a very sweet moment where she's looking at him and he's looking at her, and they're kind of just like, oh, since we didn't get to say goodbye, let's just smile this time so we can both be happy. And then he fades away, and she is very fulfilled with herself, very self-renewed, and she is like, alright, I'm gonna get up and cook everyone breakfast, and everyone's surprised by the fact that she's cooking them such a beautiful feast in the morning. But it's a very sweet chapter, it's a very tender chapter for those who have lost people they care about. I felt a personal connection to that. I think Cleo is a very relatable character in that she's very caring and very vulnerable, but she also is very protecting, and that really comes out in the fact of her being a healer. But when it comes down to it, when she has to, she can step up and defend people. And that's actually what happens here, where Tartarus shows up, and Tartarus essentially says, you're neglecting the orders of the king, you're neglecting whatever we're being told to do. And they end up fighting him, and they end up, we have this chapter called literally The Agito, which I thought was a super sick name, super cool name. But then that part ends, you fight him, and he's like, great, I'm going to get even stronger. We're going to expand the Feral Shroud and awaken the Agito. And Cleo says, you know what? No. We're going to fight one-on-one so I can squash this quarrel we have right here, right now. And Tartarus actually makes a force field around him and Cleo so that they're locked in this battle. And Cleo basically says, what you're saying about Alberius and the fact that no one can replace Alberius is correct. The prince is not going to replace Alberius. Yun is not going to replace Alberius by himself. But we and everyone at the Hollow Dome are going to help him and lead all of us to a better future together, because that's what the king would have wanted. And, we might come short and we might fail, but we'll do it together. And that's what hope is about, the hope that we can do this. And as she's doing this, she starts charging this attack, and we see Reborn and Nidhogg, the Death Reliever, sort of rise from the ground as the spirit and talk to Tartarus in this dragon language for a second. And Tartarus kind of freaks out because he realizes that Cleo has had a conversation with the king after he passed, so he's kind of freaking out. And she's still charging his attack, talking about how either, if he's going to destroy the world, then she'll have to destroy him. And he gets blasted, and he like dies, like he fades away, and it's kind of I don't think that he's actually dead, but he starts giving this mantra about like how finally I'll meet my king again kind of stuff, and it's very it's very surprising that they basically kill him. Obviously I doubt he's dead. I'm sure they'll show up, or I'm sure they'll have a change of heart. I have a theory that I'll go into in a couple minutes about how I think they're gonna play the rest of the story out. But essentially after that point, they're going up. They say that they're about halfway up the tree, and Gatav is kind of like, I think someone's following us. And Shell's like, you're probably just worried about it, whatever. And then you see a hooded figure behind them. And I believe that if I go into here and I skip this, we'll actually be able to read the end of chapter notes for the next chapter. Let's see if we can. Otherwise, I'll just have this playing in the background while I discuss my theory for what's going to happen next. Regardless of data mines. I can obviously talk about data mines if I want to, but I don't think I will, because I don't think there's much grounding in talking about them in that sense. But let's see if this will show up here, or if we'll have to play through the entire thing. Okay, it will show up. So, Chapter 20, Part 2. Nedrick speaks of his birth in order to further ascend the sacred tree, and his words change Zethia's heart. Very interesting way to phrase that. Meanwhile, the prince and his friends hurry after them to protect the shard, but their path is blocked by the Fairy King, and their battle is interrupted by an unexpected arrival. All this and more in the next campaign update. So, if I had to guess what's happening here, I would say that whoever this hood figure is at the end of the chapter will end up being the Gala character that comes next month. It could be, I don't even know who. It could be Sheila. It could be one of the siblings. It could be Emil. It could be Ferris. There's a lot of people this hooded figure could be. They could take the path of having Valak show up again and having Valak be the Gala character. We're only 2 characters away from anniversary. So after this next character will be in anniversary season for the next, at least the next Gala character. We'll have one in July. At the end of this month in June, we'll have a dragon, probably. Reborn Nidhogg, I'm presuming. And then we'll have a character. Presumably, in August, we'll have another dragon. And then in September, we'll have a new character, probably to coincide with the anniversary. Now, given the past of the game, that could be a character very prominent to the story, like, for example, Nedrick, or Zethia herself, or one of the siblings, or it could be something entirely new that we don't know about. And also in August, we're going to complete this cycle of having these these base dragons that were in the start of the game being recycled back into the game and reforged back into what they're doing, in the sense of like how they're being portrayed in the story themselves. Someone is mowing outside. I am sorry for that, but we're just going to keep going. So essentially, we're kind of facing this story conflict where people are kind of, there's a lot of characters they could pick. But my thought process on this, specifically with the Agito, is I think that the Agito are actually going to, if I had to predict the story of where it's going to go, I think that, often the Agito talk about how they're not loyal to Nedrick. It comes up in this chapter about how Tartarus has a will of his own, but has the power of gratitude towards Nedrick for giving him his power, and he's simply repaying that debt. But as we've gone through these chapters recently, all of the Agito have kind of been stopped in their path and had their ideals questioned. And most recently, in the most recent event, we actually had Astral versions of the Agito instead of the High Dragons. And the High Dragons kind of went through a similar arc where, they were against the party or trying to challenge the party, and then we had these trials, and then they eventually joined the party. So I think that we might actually see an adventure version of the Agito through this concept where they're going to keep the the evil bad Agito as bosses through astral versions of them or whatever, but then also keep them in a sense of being adventurers, because all of them have an adventure weapon type that correspond to them. All of them have a unit version that's just blown up as part of their character model. There is a way to make them work as adventurers, and I think it'd be a super cool way to introduce grindable adventures. At the moment, the only grindable free characters that we have would be either the welfare characters in the event compendium or the High Dragons themselves, where you grind the High Dragon missions and you trade for them. It'd be really cool, if there was a new level of difficulty of the Agito, or a new type of battle in the Agito where, you grind it enough and you actually get Volk as, for example, a Flame Lance kind of thing. Maybe that's a bit too speculative. Maybe that's a bit too much wishing on my end. But it is something that I could see happening with the way that the story is going. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm very excited for Goblin Nidhogg. I'm very excited for the end of the month with the celebration. There should be a video tomorrow going over all the things that are coming tomorrow, all the news that we'll get as part of the 1,000-day celebration. But yep, that's going to be it for me for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.